Anna Swift. I'm founder of Be Inspired and author of Learning Through Movement and Active Play in the Early Years. I would like to talk to you about risk-taking, risky play, and most importantly, I want to talk to you about why it's so important to allow your children to take risks. We think that protecting our children all the time is the right thing, and of course it's very important to protect our children. However, there are many benefits to allowing our children to take risks. Obviously there's good risks and bad risks, and that's what I want to talk to you about. Now, why risk-taking? Why should a child take risks? Well, pretty much a child is going to develop in every single particular way if they take a risk to allow themselves to try something new, to push themselves out of their comfort zone, to do something that they've not been able to do so far. If a child doesn't take a risk, then they're most likely not going to develop as much as they should. Now, the reason why it's good for them to take risks within home, school, early years setting is, first of all, they will feel safe and secure because they're around people who they know care about them, so they will feel a little bit more confident and comfortable to do it, and a confident and confident child will be more likely to do things without messing up. Also, if they learn about risk-taking and what's safe and what's not safe in a safe environment, then when they find themselves having to decide whether they should take a risk or not, when they're in an environment where it's not a safe environment, or they don't have people around them who will protect them, then they might not be as able to make a good decision. And also it just means if children aren't taught to take risks, then there's a very good chance that they might be timid and not try anything new. And some children might just actually be crazy and just try things without even realizing if it's a good thing or a bad thing. So in many ways it's really, really important for children to be able to take risks when they are with you and when they're with, general caregivers who will make sure that they don't do something that will really harm them. Now, what is risk-taking? Risk-taking is when a child is playing at a height, when they're playing at speed or engaging in speed, when they're using tools, so maybe real-world tools that potentially could injure them, when they're engaging in rough and tumble games, and also things like the elements, so maybe if they might fall into some water, something like that. So those are the areas of risk-taking that can occur for young children. But as adults, if we can actually figure out the difference between good risk and bad risk, then them engaging in these kind of activities or taking these kind of risks will be really good for them. Now, a bad risk is something where a child isn't going to benefit from and will most likely get injured. So, if there's sharp objects, glass, table with sharp corners where they might fall in, things like that, where it just isn't safe, then that's really a bad risk, and obviously it's just not worth letting children try and take a risk in that kind of setup. But things where the chance of them getting hurt is very unlikely, but they're still having to push themselves and take slight risks, but in a controlled kind of way, is a good risk. Now, I would say as a parent, we generally say to early years practitioners, educate yourself, understand what's good and bad. And it's the same for parents, and hopefully this video will help you figure out the difference between what's acceptable and what's not. Because as I say, parents think doing everything for your child and protecting them in every single situation is the best thing for them. It's not necessarily the case. So for example, if a child is on a climbing frame or climbing a tree, and remember, bear in mind, we're talking about children in the early years, so they're still developing quite a lot. But what we need to do is get them to understand their own abilities and what they're doing, rather than us constantly telling them what to do. So, asking them questions about, think about how high you are, have a look down. Do you feel you can climb that high? It really gets them to assess their own ability and whether, if they climbed higher, if it's going to cause a problem for them. But also, if a child is climbing, by us constantly talking at them and shouting at instructions at them and telling them to be careful, be careful, be careful, it's going to distract them from what they're doing, and potentially they would fall because they're distracted, they're not focused. And actually, a child is more likely to fall when they're with an adult giving them instructions than if they were just left to their own devices. And obviously you can intervene if you just feel like your child is really not making a good decision. But, just showing them that you can trust their opinion and their risk assessment and their, ability will instantly actually help them have a bit of confidence to make their own decisions. So it's really important to be as quiet as possible, give them the discussion or ask them the questions as little as possible. And yeah, your child can probably climb quite high, but obviously one step at a time. So if they're very young, just let them go, just allow them to do climbing up a tree or a climbing frame, but help them to assess for themselves first before you suddenly go in and try and save them. Things like, I mentioned real world tools. Now, if we actually let children use things like real china, glass, tools that we use, blunt knives, things like that. If we actually let them use the same things that we use, it really teaches them to have confidence in themselves, but it also really will help them develop a lot quicker and better if they're using the same utensils and tools as us. Now you could obviously initially you should role model, explain to them, things like carry the china with 2 hands, and things like give them a blunt knife before you give them a sharp knife, and get them to cut things like bananas that are soft, because then they can learn how to use real world tools, but with very, very little chance of getting injured. And just reinforce what's okay and what's not okay. But it really will make a huge difference to their development. And then things like construction. Give them real world things for construction. Give them natural things so that they learn to respect the environment. If you've got tires in your garden, if you can give them wood, get them to build things. Because building things is actually a real good way to teach them, a lot of things. It's problem solving, it's higher level learning, just so many things that they will develop from construction and building. But also it's a really, really good way to teach children about failure. And the reason why it's important to teach children about failure is that if you teach children to accept things aren't always perfect, if you teach children to accept that if things don't work out, let's try it again, let's keep on persevering, let's try something different. It's okay to fail, it's okay if things don't always work out first time around, but then we will try it again a different way. This is an incredibly good way of teaching children resilience. And giving children resilience is a huge gift for them for the rest of their lives. A resilient person is definitely more likely to deal with all those hard things that life throws at us. So it's really important to teach them resilience. So through, construction, but so many other things, when children are trying something new, and if it's failing, and you have those conversations with them rather than telling them how to do things, it's really, really going to make a difference to so many things, including resilience. So if a child is problem solving for themselves, if a child is taking risks and trying new things and assessing for themselves, then when they're not with you, their ability will just be so much higher than if you're constantly doing everything for them. So really have a think about allowing your child to take, good risks, And have a look at the blog, because it lists a lot of the information I've given you, just so that you can be fresh about what's okay, what's not, and just be brave and give it a go.